Mr. Sherman Flucas, welcome to the show. We'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself, give us a little bit about your background, and tell us a little bit about what you have going on here.
Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Sherman Flucas II. I'm actually an outreach director for Reach for Youth, but I also have an LLC called Legacy Mindset. Legacy Mindset is basically built upon faith, accountability, and resilience, where I actually try to make sure that the youth and young adults utilize their mind to be able to become a better performer on the field, off the field, and I look to kind of bridge that gap through some of the psychology that I experienced, not just in life, but also from my military background. I'm also a veteran who's been to one tour, and a lot of the training that I received during the military, I use to be able to equip the student athlete to become a better version of themselves.
How long were you in
Oh,
the military?
4 years,
Okay, which branch? I'm just
Army.
okay. Not like I was in the military or anything.
Oh,
I'm
okay,
just
okay. I was waiting for the
right. I thought
comeback.
like we were about to be like,
you
the
know,
one thing you don't know
I
about me is.
right. I was a Green Beret.
So,
No.
so Sherman, how do you define mindset as it relates to athletic performance?
The mindset is basically how you view yourself as being an asset to the team and being an asset to yourself, right? One of the words that I utilize a lot is a paradigm, and a paradigm is basically your programming, and that basically is something in which you're actually since you was born into this world. So if you look at it from a very simplistic nature, when you're first born, you're programmed by your parents and some of the things that are going on around you, and as you grow up, those things now become your actual subconscious and actually becomes a part of your behavior, becomes your habits, and it actually comes out and how you actually live your life. So as an athlete, we're all programmed, but where are we programmed from? Are we
Mhm.
programmed from a lens in which sports was used to be as a savior to your environment, or was it something that was used to be able to be a vehicle to just as another lane of greater potential and greater opportunity? So I think it's just basically based upon your positioning about what it's that you've been given and how you've been programmed from your paradigm.
Okay, well, so what inspired you, not possessed, what inspired you to create something like this in terms of defining how things are going for people in terms of creating this whole the LLC in itself?
Um, to be honest with you, it really was something that manifested after my experience in the military. When I was overseas, and we went to several different countries. We was primarily overseas over in Asia and other parts, and we got attached to a special force unit while we was over there, and I started to notice the difference of how they approach being overseas in that type of environment, special forces versus the traditional big army. And I started to notice that there was a significant difference about how they actually approach their physical nature, but I was more in tune to their actual intellectual and their mindsets towards being able to sustain for such long periods of time. And so when I got back home from overseas, I took a time to kind of just reset myself to kind of just really be able to evaluate what I wanted to do once I got back abroad. And when I found myself as being assistant coach over at North Central High School in Washington Township. And because of the lens in which I receive overseas, my perspective was a little bit different. I didn't want to really just come in there and just teach just the athletic component. I wanted to be able to create a sustainability to make sure they were better men off the field. Well, in order to become a better man off the field, you got to be able to change your mind. And so I started to really think about, well, what can I be able to do to bridge that gap between becoming a better person off the field while simultaneously fueling that student athlete to become a better performer on the field? And it literally just stumbled upon me about sports psychology. And so I did a little bit more research, and then I got myself enrolled in a university to go into my master's class, and I actually was taking a master's in sports psychology with North Central University. And as I was delving into my studies, it really just brought up a lot of just things about myself as a person because of my history and being involved with sports from youth league all the way up to going into the NFL combine and have an opportunity to try out for two different NFL teams. And so I really just wanted to be an asset to my community. And so one of the main things that is recession proof is human improvement. I think that that is something that's essential. And I think that that is something that can really be able to harness a new wave of student athlete if we really start dealing with the neurological, psychological components about being an athlete, and then thus bridging that gap to how it actually makes you a better student
Mm,
first. Because I think a lot of times, a lot of people want to put the athlete before the student. So I want to kind of be able to flip that script to let them know that being a student starts with the mindset and how you actually look at it, thus actually allowing for you to be able to possess success on the field. So I wanted that to be more of an articulation of language instead of just a language and something that's practical, instead of just being caught up in just conversations that coaches have with just their athletes.
uh,
I like that.
yeah. So what would you say your core principles and methodology is built on with your specific program? You know, you talk about meeting the athlete beyond just being an athlete and putting the student part first. So how would you say that shape your philosophy and methodology?
Honestly, it really is predicated on what my three core principles, which is faith, accountability, and resilience. From a very from a nature of which I have a background on the standpoint of my grandmother taking me into the sanctuary, and that's where the word faith comes from. But to take that terminology to another level, faith is basically visualization. It allows for you to be able to project what it is you want to become and actually allow for it to become a vision. A lot of times, what I say to my student athletes is that there's a difference between seeing and vision. Seeing is when
Mhm.
you can actually be able to open up your eyes. Vision is when you can close your eyes and still be able to see the success in which you actually be able to want. And so when I speak about faith, I want them to be able to see themselves successful. And so a lot of times I have a lot of exercises which is neurologically and actually allows for the student athlete to close their eyes and to kind of see themselves in the position of success, getting off if they're a track runner, getting out the blocks, seeing themselves actually being relaxed. If they're a football player, allow themselves to see themselves making a play. If they're a basketball player, allow themselves to see in a defense position to be able to make that game winning shot. Because of studies that was actually done in the early 60s and 70s, they did a test in which they actually had an athlete. They have athletes from the Olympics actually sit down, or first of all, they actually had them run a race where they actually hooked up neurological tools to their bodies, to their brains, and they actually had them run a race. And they actually took that data and actually had that as the actual standard. And so when they went and set them into a room and they put the race on the screen and had them sit down, and then they still hooked up the neurological machinery to the body, and the readings came out identical. And what that told me was that the race is not won physically, but the race is actually won mentally and neurologically before you get into a position, because the brain can't differentiate reality and what's fake. And so my method is being able to have the student athlete go within themselves and let them be reminded that the answers that they seek is already inside of themselves, and that all they have to do is just put in the work to unlock that potential.
Mhm.
I like that. Now I'm gonna go back to something you said earlier when you were talking about you were stationed with a special forces unit and their mindset and all of those things. What is it about their mindset that you found to be unique and you found to be intriguing enough to bring about all the other, all this other with the sports psychology and everything else?
Believe it or not, they actually have this mindset where they work from the inside out instead of outside in. And you can kind of relate that to a gentleman named Stephen R. Covey, if you will. He has a book called Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. And what the special force unit does is that they don't allow for the external circumstances about what's going on around them to be able to influence about what they feel within themselves. They go within themselves first and they actually delve into the information. So inside out. So they basically work from a inside out paradigm where basically they allow themselves to trust their training, to trust their leadership, to trust all those moments in which they went and worked together as a unit to be the catalyst of how they actually function when they're in a stressful environment. And so, with that being said, that means that they have to be able to unlock and to be able to work in a no fear zone, right? Because fear is something in which we are just not truly understanding, and so that creates an anxiety within ourselves. And so with working with that high level of professionalism, it really just dawned on me that it really takes an intentionality to be able to educate yourself about what it is that's coming, because the more educated that you are, the more confidence in which you actually have. But that still is an internal type of belief that you can actually be able to perform under those circumstances, right?
I like that. I mean, that makes a lot of sense when you think about um, athletes and their individual backgrounds and the environment around them, but what they believe internally and how that can influence how they react or shapes who they believe themselves to be. So that's a really unique perspective that I wouldn't have known that you learned in the army during training. And so with that mindset and with that philosophy and methodology, do you have a specific success story that you would like to share about an athlete you kind of worked with and began to embed this mindset, this different mindset, right? Visualizing faith, mission accountability, resilience. So how that help that athlete to become a better student first and then an athlete.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So it was this past summer. My wife, she had a coworker whom lived in Atlanta, and they had a son whom he was basically like second string on junior varsity, and he didn't lack athleticism. He just lacked confidence within himself. But he didn't realize that his lack of confidence was prohibiting him from being able to be the essential player that he wanted to be. And so I got him on the phone and I talked to him for 2 days. And what I honed in on is having him go within himself to be help to allow for him to be able to take evaluation of who are you? What is your perspective of yourself? How do you view yourself? And then once I actually got that foundation, I then was able to be able to take how his perspective of within himself and then give him a practical evaluation of how he viewed himself and what he was doing in the classroom, meaning that he was one that wasn't very confident in himself. And so
Mm-hmm.
when he went to the classroom, he didn't want to raise his hand. He didn't want to ask questions. He was very smart, but he didn't want to be able to put that out in front of other people because it
Mm-hmm.
brought anxiety. And so
Mm-hmm.
once I actually identified that, what I did was I then had him do an actual visual exercise, and I wanted him to be able to get himself into an uncomfortable position, because growth only happens when you're uncomfortable. And so I wanted him to be able to visualize himself uncomfortable, but then I wanted him to also be able to see himself as successful. I wanted him to be able to visualize himself as a starter. I wanted him to be able to visualize himself as a vocal leader. And just I wanted him to be able to have more of an abundant mindset about his approach towards the game. So this was going into this third or fourth week of his actual training. Well, when he gave me a call back 2 or 3 weeks later, and told me that he went from second to third string on the JV to now being second, and then he became a starter. And so the last 2 years of his career, he was a starter, and now
Wow.
he's a Division I 2A player in Division I
Wow.
football.
That's great. That's
Yeah.
great. Wow. And so when you have those experiences, I mean, just even especially because that was just last summer, what do you feel are some of the biggest, mental challenges that athletes face? One is confidence, which you shared with that specific athlete, but what do you feel like is the biggest barrier um, when you engage with athletes today?
The outside in, basically meaning that they allow for their environment to dictate how they feel on the inside. And I think that outside environment sometimes, or in circumstances with parenting,
Hmm.
with the lack of,
Hmm.
or it could be just the kids or the athletes in which they hang around. Like after the games, instead of going home, getting the ice bath, watching some
Hmm.
film, or just recovering, they want to go out to a keg party. They want to go
Hmm.
out and party and kick it. But I think that a lot of the downfall is basically filtered around when you are by yourself, what type of information are you feeding yourself? You know, are you continuously feeding yourself a bunch of junk that has no type of direct correlation to the greater good of your success on the field? Meaning that, are you watching film? Are you being able to study other professionals that's already in that realm? Are the people who you hanging around, are they pointing to your dreams and your ambitions? Or are they actually extracting from you to where now you're doing more of a makeup call instead of being able to get ahead? Meaning that you're not staying constantly engaged in the
Mm-hmm.
success in the lineage of where you want to be. So if you want to be able to say you want to go to the NBA or you want to go to the MLB or you want to go to MLS, does your lifestyle work congruently with that vision? Does it work congruently with the faith, with the vision? Or are you putting yourself into a predicament where it's actually hindering you? And so a lot of
Mm-hmm.
the student athletes that I have, it's pretty much me just reminding them that your environment and the people who you hang around with is going to be a direct correlation to how your vision and how your trajectory is going to be able to filter out at the end of the day.
I like that.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of athletes even consider that. They'll say things like, "Yeah, I want to go to
Mm-hmm.
NFL," but when you see them, they're on their phone scrolling social media.
Mm-hmm.
They're not doing anything outside of going to practice, and that's about it. But it takes more than that a lot of times. You need something extra, even if it's just a matter of you mentally running through some things. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, because
absolutely.
we talk to our kids about, because Coach Ian and I, we coach together. So we talk to our kids about that all the time. You can only do this so many times,
Mm-hmm.
but you can do this unlimited amounts of times in your head. So you can practice it and rehearse it that way. With your training on visualizing yourself and doing the mental
Mhm.
components of it, what are some of the things that you think are maybe mislabeled or misunderstood when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to mindset training?
That's a good question. I think one of the things that I think that is very underestimated is the power of the subconscious.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the subconscious is is like I articulated is your paradigm. Is basically your programming what you're given. And I think that a lot of the athletes they watch film, but they watch film, but they don't know how to truly watch film, or they don't know how to truly study. They basically just evaluate. For an example, if they are if they're a football player, they may watch film and they may see how many tackles they have or how many yards or how many catches. They don't
Mm-hmm.
really look at what was their release point, how did he release, right? And so I think the part that I think that can really be more emphasized on is having the ability to know how to study, how to appropriately study your craft, and how important it is that when you study in your craft, how that is actually a seed that's being planted. Because I like to use the analogy that the mind is like a garden. It doesn't care what's being planted; it's still going to grow whatever it is you plant into it. So it's essential that if you're a person that has a that has a desire or has a intentional type of goal, if you will, that you pour that information within yourself, and you allow for yourself to really adopt it as who you are, right? And you have to become what you want. You have to live how you want to become. So if you're a person that wants to become a success story, if you want to become in this professional realm, your behavior should be displayed in a professional manner, because you have to live it. It becomes something a part of your emotion. And emotion, and what I tell the kids, is energy and motion, emotion. How you live your energy is going to be able to push things that you want into motion. So you want to make sure that you have the right information given to you.
I mean, yeah, because that's one of those things where it's like I was saying, we don't really look at it as a whole. I think some people skip over it, and we tell kids all the time it's 10% condition, 90% response. So
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
it's like how you handle those things. Do you tailor like you talked about football and basketball and MLB? Do you tailor like your training to specific sports, or are we just kind of, or is it more so this is something that's applicable to every sport?
It's applicable towards everybody. When I first came up with legacy mindset, I wanted to make sure first and foremost that it was recession proof,
Mm,
right? And with it being legitimately recession proof, that's when I started delving in a little bit deeper, and I started studying Earl Nightingale. I started looking at Bob Proctor. I started having conversations with our trainers that was over at in the MIC at North Central High School. I started going deeper into the why and the behind, and then of course I start utilizing my faith in my Christianity and following my Lord and Savior, and I started really honing into what made them so impactful. And what make them so impactful is their ability to have whomever it is they're talked to go within themselves and realize that everything in which they have, everything they want, everything they desire, everything you ever want to achieve, whether it be in sports, whether it be in life, whether it be in your grades, whether it be in your family. It all starts with you changing your behavior, changing who you are. And so, if you notice that if your outcome on this performance is not what you want it to be, go back and take evaluation of what did you do leading up to this point. Because if you want to become professional in the next 2 or 3 years, it starts right now. Because your trajectory starts right now to who you want to become the next 2 or 3 years, and so forth and so on. And it's about repetition, right? You just can't expect to be able to have this high level outcome if you're not putting in the work when it's time for you to put in the work when nobody is really looking and paying attention. It has to be something that you desire. And so I make sure that I continuously reiterate that you have to live who you want to be right now. So if you want to be a high student athlete, if you want to be successful, start carrying yourself, start talking in that manner, start speaking yourself. I make sure that I tell my kids to do a lot of auto suggestion, meaning that they pour into themselves. They look themselves in the mirror and says, I am superior. I am a great athlete. I am a great person. And I have them start giving themselves auto suggestions, because giving yourself auto suggestion is now telling your frontal lobe, and it then connects to your actual subconscious mode, which then actually becomes a habit, which then turns into a lifestyle.
awesome. So even with the, empowering the athlete, like you need to start speaking it, thinking it, visualizing it. How do you equip your athletes you work with to handle setbacks or injuries or kind of detours that come with life in general, but also as an athlete? Because I'm sure just with how you've worked with athletes, probably their recovery or their mindset, you can just see a difference in individuals you've worked with and really help to give them the tools necessary to move past it.
Mhm.
How have you seen that work for the athletes you work with who may have experienced setbacks or injuries?
So I could use myself as an example. When I was in college, we was playing Malone College, and I never forget we was playing Malone College, and there was a tight end drag coming across the middle. I was playing outside linebacker. We both went up simultaneously. This guy was about 6'3", 245 pounds. He came down on my left leg, and I
Mm,
tore my meniscus, and so I
mm,
had to be able to get surgery. And so when I got in and I got the surgery, I was out. So then I had to go within myself. So what I did was I used, believe it or not, I don't know if you heard of this app called Luminosity. And so, if you look it up, Luminosity is an app in which actually exercises the brain, and it actually be able to bridge the gap between sensory and between how the actual brain works through different type of exercises. And what I've noticed is that when a student athlete is injured, the first thing they want to do is blame themselves, right? They always want to say, "Oh, why me? Why me?" Right? But I also have to remind them that number one, when you're an athlete, injuries come with the territory, right? So it's something in which you just have to be able to look past. You have to be able to have that part of what I say is the faith. You have to be able to see yourself healed, right? You can't dwell on what it is that's happening right now, because this is an external situation. Yes, you feel the pain. Yes, you're very immobile. Yes, you can't do the things you're doing, but you can be able to still visualize yourself being in a position of success. So then I may give them the Luminosity app to do, or I may sit down and I may be able to talk to them and to watch film. And so I have them become to go back to becoming a student. We
hmm
have to,
hmm
and I use that moment as a life learning lesson to say that in life you have to be you have to be a lifelong learner. You
Mm-hmm.
just can't
Mm-hmm.
learn just during the season. So this is an
Mm-hmm.
opportunity for you to exercise beyond. How can you help your teammates? How can you be able to motivate your teammates? How can you help your coaches? That's basically how can you still become an asset. Don't
Mm-hmm.
allow the physical injury to prevent
Mm-hmm.
you from exercising your other faculties in which you actually been given as a gift to be able to help you become a superior athlete. Any
Mm-hmm.
athlete in the professional realm doesn't stop at the injury. They allow the
Mm-hmm.
injury to actually become a bridge to become better. So either you can
Mm-hmm.
choose to stay in this place of injury, or you can actually be able to project yourself into a place of healing to become to become more superior than where you were. And it's all based upon your mindset and you choosing to be able to walk that path. And so I just continue to just to reiterate the psychological position of making sure that they stay healthy, strong mentally. And so then now it feeds other parts.
And I have a follow-up to that because, again, when you athletes a time or two may have a little injury or just a detour. And so how you've talked about looking at the student first, how do you prepare and equip your student athletes for the realities of not everyone is going to make it professionally, right?
Yeah.
And I've seen, you know, uh, old teammates or people that I, competed with who like are just still stuck on, well, I was supposed to do X. So how do you help equip them as a parallel to, while this is your end goal, let's parallel plan per se or however. How does that look with you working?
Absolutely. So outside of using myself an example, I kind of use the analogy of a car insurance. And what I say to them is that what is the one thing you got to have in order to drive a car? And they be like, "Do you have a license?" I'm like, "Yeah, okay. What else you got to have?" And so they go through and I say insurance. And so when I say insurance, I said insurance is basically there that if something would actually happen, that you can actually be able to have something to fall back on.
Mm-hmm.
So what that means is that you may have football, or you may have this sport, but what is your insurance policy,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Right.
so your education is your lifetime insurance policy, which basically means that once you get that degree, once you go to school, once you go to that trade, whatever it may have you, that you can be able to cash in on that policy anytime in your life. So if you get a 4 year degree and then you end up playing sports and at any given time throughout that time frame, even if you do make it in sports, there's going to have to come a point to where you're going to have to walk away from the game. So
Mm-hmm.
what's going to be your backup plan? Let's not just focus in on a short-term vision, but let's
Mm-hmm.
look at the longevity of yourself. You're not going to be 16, 17, 18 years old. So I make sure to kind of just keep reiterating the importance that nothing lasts forever but your mind. Your mind
Mm-hmm.
can be able to work forever, but it's all about you being able to pour into yourself. And it starts by you actually having the skill set of staying in the classroom to get that education. And even not in the classroom, if you decide to become a plumber, if you become this, a
Mm-hmm.
trade, where they have you, even in those professions, you still have to become a learner. And
Mm-hmm.
so the more opportunities you present yourself, the easier the information can be ingested to then be able to be regurgitated when it's time for you to cash in.
I want to circle back to something. Are you still with North Central?
No, I'm not. I'm
Oh,
not.
okay. Because I was gonna say it's like all of us. We all have that
Literally,
that
like we
North
haven't
Central
ran into each
connection.
other.
And you
Yeah.
mentioned it a couple of times, and I'm like, I don't think I've ever seen you there. So yeah, okay. So we're
Yeah.
there. We're both there, but we're
Yes.
on the track side. You were on the football.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Okay.
that's
Okay.
a interesting situation, interesting connection that we just
Yes,
made.
absolutely.
What do you say in terms of like things that are emerging, some of the new trends, maybe technology or something like that in terms of sports psychology? What are the things that have you excited about the profession overall and moving forward?
To be honest with you, Ben, the virtual reality goggles that they actually now have come out, the VR goggles in which you can actually be able to
Mm-hmm.
wear, that's going to be the actual shift that is going to bridge the gap between old school and new school.
Mm-hmm.
Because then now, because of the technology, you can actually remember I used the example of how they had the track runners hook up to the neurological.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can actually be able to have someone sit down with the virtual goggles and run a race.
Oh.
You see what I mean? So
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
now you can actually be able to customize coming out the blocks or running a 200 or running a 400, right? And you can actually start them to exercise their breathing, right? And so all this is sitting down, which then actually prevents injuries because they're not overutilizing their muscles. So then when it comes down to them training, they're more efficient to work on those fast twitch muscles and be able to have more of a rest with the neurological placement of the actual goggles themselves. So then when it comes down to their performance, they not only have the physical capabilities, but now they have the neurological connection to the body to be able to exert another energy because of the confidence that's being instilled. And so with the virtual reality and with the goggles, it's not going to be a hindrance. It's going to be something that if used in the right lane, in the right position, will be able to project the actual art and the craft to a whole nother level of success for these student athletes.
I like that. You know, neurology, you're talking about language here.
I be careful. I keep that lane up to you, Doc. You can keep that lane.
I
But
get excited about that stuff too, though. You know, I know because even when me and Coach, when we could talk to our kids, we're like, hey, if you can't see yourself doing this, then it's going to be a problem. We coach hurdles, hurdles and jumps. Hurdles is a challenge for a lot of people because they just it's like it hasn't clicked yet. So
Mhm.
a big thing that we teach is like you were talking about the visualization of seeing yourself go through it, go over it, making sure that it's a smooth race, seeing your race, all those different things. So you're right on target with that because we know that the visualization and the mental imagery plays a tremendous role in anybody's, any sport really, but particularly in like when we're talking hurdles, you can only go over so many hurdles before you just start breaking down. So at some
Absolutely.
point, you got to be able to see it here to get it going, to be able to make it happen. So
Yes,
that's
sir.
I'm really excited about that, and the goggles is something that's new, and
Yes.
we'll have to look into that.
Right. We're gonna have to have you come and work with the team for
Right.
sure. For sure.
Yeah. Now,
Um,
now, what would be if somebody wanted to work with you, if they wanted to follow you, get learn more about what you have, more about what you're offering? Well, how would you suggest they get in touch with you?
You can reach out to me through via Facebook. You can look up Legacy Mindset. You can message me on Legacy Mindset. You can also reach me in my email. You can look at my legacy mindset, or excuse me, yeah, mylegacymindset.com. And
mhm,
you can go to my website and see some of the work that I've done because I not only just work with athletes, but I also go into schools. So I go into schools and I kind of speak to the young kids. I'm going to Fox Hill on Friday and I'm speaking to their third, fourth, and fifth graders, not just about sports, but just about just being kids and the importance of education and things of that sort of nature. So my ministry is just pouring into people,
mhm,
whatever lane that I'm called to do so. I'm just grateful that I'm finally able to use my history with sports to
mhm.
just be an asset to just further just the development, and to really get kids to understand the importance of what you do off the field is on the field. So I don't have an Instagram page. I took it down for a while because just for own personal reasons.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna get back on social media. But you can reach me at s.flucas, the number 10 at gmail.com as well. Or like I articulated, you go to mylegacymindset.com and I have a link that's actually on the website. You can actually go there and you can email me and I check my email and I'm more than happy to assist so they can get through you as well. So I appreciate the opportunity to come on your live stream on your web on what it is you do and I just appreciate it. I'm thankful and I'm grateful.
Yeah, well, we like to put. I mean, we have a lot of people around who are doing big things, especially when it
Mhm,
comes to involving athletes and things like that. And we're working on some things ourselves in terms of helping out this sport, in particular track and field, and then in terms of the kids around us and helping them grow. So we want to put out every resource and every opportunity that they have, to be able to grow and be able to be better. And so that's why we wanted you on, because I don't know if every coach like we think like that as coaches, but we don't know every coach. If every
right.
Right.
coach thinks like that, they may not share any of these things with their
At all.
their
At
At
all.
athletes.
all.
So we
Yeah.
wanted them
Right.
to have a resource to know, like, okay, let me reach out to some other people to help build my team up and help these kids be even better than where they are,
Yes,
than what
sir.
they are, and then take them further than where they are right now.
Mhm, mhm.
So
Absolutely.
Before they even get to college, right? Like, I didn't hear about sports psychology until college. And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
I could have
yeah,
used this in
Right.
middle school, high school. Like, I mean, just so yeah, it's really
exactly,
important for the audience to see you and understand the importance of it early and
right.
Yeah.
not waiting until it's too late or you run up against a wall and it's like, well, what's going on? Oh, well, did you know that
Yeah.
it's 90% mental and 10% physical? A
Yeah.
lot of athletes don't learn that until it's too late. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. And that's why and that was another reason why I wanted to do it, because I fell victim to that, as you are, as many of us probably did, especially within our community. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's something that's not really frowned. It's not really just, it's not really pushed. We push the physical nature of the game, but we really don't push the mental part of it. And
Mm-hmm.
if we do allude to the mental part of it, it isn't substantial enough to be able to carry them through the adversities that come with
Mm-hmm.
injury or with family situations or external situations. So this is a very budding lane of what sports is bringing with sports psychology, with how things are being blossomed. So I'm looking forward to what's going to come.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Right.
We
Well, we
are as
thank
well.
you, and we appreciate you taking a little time out and joining us and sharing with us. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
we look forward to maybe seeing you down the road, or maybe incorporating you in some of the other things that we have
Yeah,
going on.
absolutely. For sure.
Hey, I'm willing and able. Just let me know. I'm here. Thank you. I appreciate you.
All
Thank
right.
you. It's such a
Thanks.
pleasure.
Thanks again.